Most American homeowners spend their weekends maintaining yard trends that were popular 20 years ago and have quietly aged the property by a decade. The plastic edging strips, the dyed orange mulch, the clipped foundation shrubs lined up in matching balls. Most of us cannot see what dates the yard because we have lived with it so long it has become invisible. The chain garden centers installed these trends across the last 40 years. They never installed the version that aged well. Number 8 is the trend in suburban yards right now, slowly killing the tree underneath it. Number 1 is the trend almost every American backyard has at least one example of, and it quietly makes the property look 15 years older than it actually is. 15-yard trends to rip out in 2026. Stay with me. Number 15, the clipped boxwood bear, the hedge rabbit, the yew shaped like a dolphin. Topiary animals had their peak in American residential gardens between 1970 and 1990. The look came down from English estate gardens and was reinterpreted in suburban front yards as a way to signal taste and craftsmanship. A well-clipped topiary peacock in a Long Island front yard in 1978 was a status object. What changed is the maintenance load. A topiary animal requires monthly hand shearing across the growing season, and one good lapse turns the bear into a shapeless green blob within 6 weeks. After 15 years, the interior is bare. Restoration usually means removal and starting over. The look has aged the way avocado green kitchen appliances aged. It signals a specific decade rather than a timeless garden. What to do instead? Replace the clipped animal with a single specimen, evergreen of distinctive natural form, a dwarf weeping spruce, a Japanese maple, or a corkscrew willow. The plant carries the focal point role, reads as natural rather than dated, and asks for 1 annual pruning instead of 6. If you cannot bear to lose the topiary bear, move it to a back corner spot where it becomes private nostalgia rather than the front yard statement. Number 14, the wooden wishing well in the middle of the front lawn. The decorative wishing well, a stained wood frame with a small shingle roof over a planter, was a fixture in American suburban front yards from 1960 through 1995. Someone carried home a kit from the hardware store, assembled it on a Saturday, and placed it near the driveway as a statement of presence. What it signals now is age. The wood weathers to gray and silver within 5 years. The shingles curl, the rope handle frays. The same era produced its companion ornaments, the gazing ball on the metal stand, the deer statue, the porcelain frog, charming on the day they were placed, quietly dating the entire yard by year 5. What to do instead? The focal point is better delivered by a single distinctive plant, a small flowering tree like a Japanese stewartia, an eastern redbud, or a witch hazel. The plant provides visual interest year-round and adds value rather than subtracting. If the wishing well has sentimental meaning, retire it to a back garden corner where it functions as private memory rather than front yard centerpiece. Number 13, the wavy decorative edging, plastic or precast concrete, runs along the front of the foundation bed. The scalloped edging trend ran from 1980 through 2005. The shape echoed Victorian-era cast iron edging. Mass-produced versions came in plastic strips with curved scallops on top and precast concrete sections about a foot long. At the time, the look suggested the wavy edge softened the line between lawn and bed without requiring actual cast iron. What it does now is announce the decade the bed was installed. The plastic versions fade to chalky off-white within 2 seasons, and they crack under the first hard winter. The concrete versions chip at every corner and gradually heave out of the soil through freeze and thaw cycles. What to do instead? Pull the scalloped edging. Recut the bedline with a half-moon edger in early spring. Make a 3-inch deep vertical cut along the lawn edge with gentle curves that follow the natural shape of the bed. Mulch up to the cut. The line stays sharp for 6 to 8 weeks. Number 12, the carpet of identical petunias, pansies, impatiens, or marigolds planted in a tight grid along the entire front of the house. Mass annual bedding came from the 1970s through the 1990s. Professional landscape companies installed flats of identical annuals in geometric patterns in late spring, then pulled everything out in fall. A front bed full of 72 identical pink begonias was a confident statement. What it costs today is the entire labor and budget cycle. Mass annual planting at modern garden center prices run $60 to $120 per bed per season, repeated twice a year. The look itself has come to read as institutional, the planting style of office parks and bank entrances rather than residential. What to do instead? Mixed perennial borders deliver longer bloom seasons, do not require annual replanting, and look established rather than installed. A single bed with 3 to 5 species, a long blooming perennial like salvia or coreopsis as the foundation, plus structural foliage plants like euchera or sedum, plus a tall accent like Russian sage, produces 15 to 20 years of color from a single $50 planting. Pull the annual bedding. Plant perennials. Walk away for 2 decades. Quick word before number 11. There is more practical perennial garden design than fits in any one video. I gathered 40 years of it into a book at henrysgardensecrets.com, Low Maintenance Garden Blueprint, How to Build a Beautiful Perennial Garden. The book is the long version. I will not bring it up again. Now to number 11. Number 11, the 20-foot residential flagpole installed as a centerpiece in the front lawn. The residential flagpole as a landscaping element peaked in American suburbia between 1975 and 2005. At their best, the poles were thoughtful tributes. At their worst, they functioned as a substitute for actual landscape design. The trend that needs to come out is specifically the flagpole as the central design element of the yard. The pole acts as a focal point because nothing else in the yard is strong enough to anchor the design. The pole itself is not the problem. The problem is what surrounds it. A circular bed of red, white, and blue annuals that takes the place of any other landscaping decision. The yard reads as a flagpole with the rest of the property arranged as a frame. What to do instead? If the flag matters to you, keep the pole. Move it to a corner of the property, then anchor the front yard with an actual landscape design, a small flowering tree. Layered shrubs, a perennial bed under the tree. For most American yards, the flag works best on a wall-mounted bracket near the front door, flying when it should fly, never the centerpiece of the landscape. Number 10, the bright turquoise planter on the porch, the fluorescent orange ceramic pot at the entry, the lipstick red glazed urn in the middle of the front bed. The neon bright planter trend ran from 2010 through 2023. It came in with the broader maximalist design wave, including bright kitchen colors, accent walls, and painted front doors, and it arrived in residential gardens through home improvement television and Instagram. The reason it worked is that the bright planter was instant visual interest. A $200 turquoise glazed pot delivered immediate impact to a porch that needed something. What dates it now is the pace of the color trend cycle. The turquoise of 2015 looks dated in 2026, the same way avocado green looked dated by 1980. What to do instead? Choose container materials that age into the landscape rather than against it, such as terracotta that develops moss, and patina, glazed pots in neutral earth tones, weathered metal, and cast stone. Let the plant in the pot become the color statement rather than the pot itself. A single mature boxwood in a terracotta urn reads the same way at year 2 as at year 20. A turquoise pot reads as 2015 by 2026. Keep the neon planter if the color brings you joy. Just understand that joy reads as nostalgia rather than current design within 5 years. Number 9. The lone maple, oak, or ornamental tree planted exactly in the middle of an open front lawn with no other landscaping around it. The dead center lawn tree was an American suburban convention from the 1950s through the 1990s. The post-war developer playbook set the house 30 feet back from the curb and planted the maple at the exact midpoint of the lawn rectangle. The open lawn was the design vocabulary of the era. The single tree provided shade and structure without disrupting the green carpet. It looked orderly and intentional. What is wrong today is the design vocabulary moved on. The lone tree on lawn look reads as visually undeveloped as if the yard never got finished. The tree fights the lawn. The grass under the canopy thins and the exposed roots get scalped by the mower. What to do instead? Bed the area under the tree out from the trunk to about 3 feet beyond the drip line. Mulch flat, 2 to 3 inches deep, never piled against the trunk, which we get to at number 8. Plant with shade perennials, hostas, heuchera, astilbe, hellebores, ferns. The single tree becomes the anchor of a layered shade garden. The yard suddenly looks designed rather than developer-issued. Number 8. The mound of mulch piled 12 to 18 inches up the trunk of the tree, creating a cone shape that the landscape industry sells as a tidy, low-maintenance solution. This is the trend the chain landscape companies sold across the last 25 years that quietly killed more residential trees than any storm or pest. The volcano look came from the misreading of an older European practice, mounding mulch around newly planted bare root trees for winter protection, and was reinterpreted in American commercial landscape contracts as a year-round maintenance pattern. The reason the volcano became standard is that it looks tidy from the road. The cone shape provides a defined visual element. The landscape crew shows up twice a season, dumps a wheelbarrow of fresh mulch against the trunk, and leaves with the tree looking freshly maintained. What the volcano actually does is kill the tree. The mulch piled against the bark traps moisture against the trunk continuously, leading to bark rot. The mulch encourages adventitious roots to grow upward into the pile rather than outward into the soil, and those roots eventually girdle the trunk and strangle the tree from within. The constant moisture invites fungal pathogens that gradually colonize the cambium. The signs are slow, yellowing leaves at the top of the canopy, sparse early spring leaf out, and eventual canopy collapse over 3 to 7 years. The University of Maryland Extension, Penn State Extension, and the International Society of Arboriculture have published warnings against mulch volcanoes for over 20 years. The chain landscape industry continued the practice because the crews were paid by the mulch yard. What to do instead? Pull the mulch back from the trunk by at least 3 to 4 inches. The base of the trunk and the root flare, where the trunk widens into the root system, must be visible and exposed to air. Spread the existing mulch into a flat ring extending out to the drip line of the canopy, 2 to 3 inches deep, never piled. The tree resumes normal growth within 1 season. The damage done by years of volcano mulching is partly reversible if caught early. If you see the volcano shape on a tree in your yard right now, go pull it back this afternoon. The tree is fighting for its life. If this video is the kind of practical gardening you wish someone had shown your neighbor 20 years ago, the like button helps the algorithm find more yards with the same problem before more trees come down. Number 7. The orange-brown stained pressure-treated wood used for raised beds, retaining walls, and garden benches. The pressure-treated lumber trend in American backyards ran from 1975 through 2015. The material was cheap, widely available, and resisted rot for 15 to 20 years. What dates it now is the specific orange-brown color of the treatment. The material also weathers into streaky gray-brown by year 10, and the corners crack and split. What to do instead? For new raised beds and retaining walls, use cedar, redwood, or composite lumber. Cedar weathers to a silver gray that reads as designed rather than faded. Composite holds its color for 20-plus years. The cost premium over pressure treated is 20 to 30%. It is repaid across the longer functional life. For existing pressure-treated structures, the easiest improvement is a wash and stain with a solid color exterior stain in a darker neutral, such as black, deep charcoal, or weathered oak. The orange-brown disappears under the darker stain. The structure reads as current rather than as 1985. The function does not change. The visual decade does. Number 6. The bright white vinyl picket or privacy fence enclosing the entire backyard. The white vinyl fence peaked between 1995 and 2015. The material arrived as a maintenance-free alternative to painted wood. No repainting, no rot, no replacement boards. The maintenance-free promise was real. A 6-foot privacy fence in white vinyl ran $20 to $30 per linear foot installed, lasted 20-plus years, and required only soap and water twice a year. What dates it now is the visual register of bright optical white in the landscape. The white fence reads as a hard plastic edge against the soft greens and earth tones of mature plantings. The modern fence aesthetic uses deeper colors, such as black vinyl, dark bronze metal, or weathered gray composite, which recede into the planting rather than dominating. What to do instead? For new fence installation, choose matte black or dark bronze vinyl, or horizontal cedar with a dark stain. The fence functions identically for privacy, security, and dog containment, but reads as a backdrop rather than foreground. For existing white vinyl, plant a screening hedge against the fence on the inside. Inkberry holly, Annabelle hydrangea, or upright yew softens the white line within 3 growing seasons. Drop your state in the comments and tell me one yard trend you have already pulled out of your own property. The pattern shapes which trends I cover regionally next. Now to number 5. Number 5. The smooth fist-sized river rocks or the porous orange lava rocks spread across an entire foundation bed as a permanent ground cover. The rock mulch trend ran in American suburban yards from 1975 through 2010. River rock came in as a low-maintenance alternative to mulch. Install once and never replace. Lava rock came alongside as a textural variation, often dyed brighter orange. The salesman at the rock yard was right about the maintenance. Rock does not break down. A rock-mulched bed installed in 1982 might still have the same rocks in it today. What is wrong is everything else. Weeds germinate in the dust between the rocks within 2 seasons. The rocks absorb heat through the day and radiate it back at night, cooking the soil and roots of any plant in the bed. The look reads as 1985. What to do instead? Pull the rock or hire a teenager to pull it and dispose at the rock yard you bought it from, which usually accepts returns for free. Replace with 3 to 4 inches of natural shredded hardwood mulch. Plant a mix of low evergreen shrubs and perennials. The bed comes back to life within 1 season. Maintenance is slightly less because the soil cools and weed pressure drops with organic mulch. Number 4. The thin black or brown plastic strip with a rounded top edge runs along the boundary between lawn and planting bed. Plastic edging was a fixture in American yards from 1985 through 2015. It was a black polyethylene strip with anchoring stakes, sold at every hardware store, about $2 per linear foot installed. The promise was a clean edge without annual recutting. The promise was partly true. The strip held the edge for the first season or 2. What dates it now is the inevitable failure mode. Within 2 or 3 winters, the plastic heaves from freeze-thaw cycles. The rounded top rises an inch or 2 above the soil line. The strip starts to curl. By year 5, it looks weathered and amateur. By year 10, it signals a yard not actively redesigned in a generation. What to do instead? Pull the plastic edging, recut the bed lines with a half-moon edger, 3 inches deep, vertical cut, and gentle curves that follow the natural shape. The cut needs redoing twice a year, and it takes about 10 minutes per bed. The cut bed line reads as confidently designed. The plastic strip reads as a homeowner who wanted to skip the cutting work. Number 3, the straight line of identical yew, juniper, boxwood, or spirea, pruned into matching round balls running across the front of the house. The cookie-cutter foundation row was the default American front yard landscape installation from 1960 through 2010. The developer planted upright yew or spreading juniper in a tight straight line 3 feet off the foundation. The homeowner inherited the planting and pruned matching shapes year after year. The reason it worked then is it was easy to maintain and produced a recognizable evergreen presence in winter. A row of 7 identical yew balls reading from the curb signaled the property was cared for. What is wrong today is the aesthetic conversation moved on. The cookie-cutter row reads as developer issued rather than designed. What to do instead? Replace the straight row with a layered foundation planting that breaks the line, 3 to 4 different species rather than one. Vary the heights. A typical plan: a small flowering tree at one corner, a mid-height evergreen like inkberry or compact yew, a flowering shrub like hydrangea Annabelle or knockout roses, and a low evergreen like boxwood wintergreen as ground layer. The layered planting reads as a designed garden. Maintenance is about the same, 1 pruning per year, no shearing required. You will see the difference in the property value within 1 year. Number 2. The 6 to 8 foot strip of mown grass running between 2 flower beds is wider than any path needs to be and harder to maintain than either of the beds it separates. The over-wide grass path is the most subtle of the dated trends on this list because most homeowners do not see it as a trend at all. The path is just the leftover space between things that got planted. But the proportions tell a specific story about when the yard was laid out, mostly the 1970s and the 1980s, when residential lawn culture was at its peak and grass was the default for every space the homeowner did not specifically plant. The reason the wide grass path looked right at the time is that lawn maintenance was a Saturday ritual. The wider the lawn, the more important the maintenance, the more present the homeowner felt in the landscape. Mowing was a hobby. Edging was a craft. What is wrong with it today is that the modern garden conversation argues the opposite direction. Tighter beds, less lawn, more biodiversity. The wide grass path reads as a leftover from an era when lawn was the goal rather than a connective space. What to do instead? Narrow the grass paths to the width of 1 mower deck, usually 20 to 24 inches, and expand the planting beds on either side. The narrower path is easier to maintain, requires less mowing, and reads as part of the design rather than as leftover space. For the more committed approach, replace the path entirely with stepping stones set in pea gravel or shredded bark, with low ground cover plants between them. The yard reads as a garden rather than as a lawn with beds in it. One more thing before number 1. The trend almost every American yard has at least one example of. If you want more of these 40-year design breakdowns in your feed when they drop, the subscribe button is right below. Now to the trend you almost certainly have somewhere on your own property. Number 1. The dyed orange, dyed red, or dyed black wood mulch spread in matching color across every foundation bed. Dyed mulch is the most universal trend on this list. Almost every American suburb has it on at least one bed right now. The chain garden center pushes it as a premium product. The commercial landscape company installs it in March and refreshes it in October. What is wrong with it is the unmistakable visual signature. Bright orange and deep red wood chips read as 2015, not as 2026. The neon orange has become the color signature of Chain Garden Center promotional season. The dyed red has become the signature of low-end commercial landscape contracts. The matching color across every bed amplifies the institutional feel. What to do instead? Switch to natural shredded hardwood mulch, labeled double shredded hardwood at the bulk yard. About half the price of bagged dyed mulch per cubic yard. It breaks down into the soil within 2 seasons. It reads as confident landscape rather than a commercial application. The yard transforms within one application cycle. The mulch goes from announcement to background. The plants in the beds come forward. The whole property looks 15 years younger. That is number one. The mulch in almost every American backyard right now that is quietly aging the entire property by 15 years. 15-yard trends from the notebook. Topiary animals to dyed mulch. Pull the plastic edging. Cut the bed lines with a half-moon edger. Pull the mulch back from the trunks. Switch to natural shredded hardwood. Replace cookie-cutter shrubs with layered plantings. Move the flagpole to the corner. Stain the brown lumber dark. Most of these changes cost under $50. All of them take a single Saturday morning. 40 years from now, the gardener walking your yard will see a property that read as current in 2026, not a property that read as installed in 1992. That is the yard you leave behind.